Now, the Prime Minister will unveil his plan for change soon, setting new targets to reset his government's agenda after what can only be described as an awful few months.
The speech is going to focus on Labour's missions for the future. We want to know whether you think these are the right sort of missions. They include growing the economy. Let me sort of just define that for you. That's stack the deck for the multinational corporations and crush the small and medium-sized enterprises. He's going to talk about an NHS fit for the future. Again, sell it to massive corporations, but leverage it for guilt, Matt, whenever necessary. Safer streets, so tackling crime, which in my opinion means treating everyone as though they're a criminal but not actually doing anything with the actual criminals. Secure power through clean energy. Again, stack the deck for the massive companies and add cost to small and medium-sized enterprises. And the last one is... That's it, 4.
But the thing is...
Opportunities for all, that's the one.
But the thing is, Bev, there is one glaring omission in all of this, which is the big word of the day, the most important issue of the country, immigration. What would the government focus on when it comes to that, Bev?
Well, this is what you see all the time in your polling, that immigration is so important to people in this country. Even though it feels like it's the kind of thing you're not really allowed to say. It's not been part of the national dialogue, has it?
Well, I say it all the time.
You do.
I mean, if you ask people out there, probably people watching this show, they say it's the #1 issue facing the country. We just had those immigration stats last week. 1.2 million people coming into the country over the last year, enough to fill a city the size of Birmingham.
Where I think this conversation gets difficult, and maybe just that Keir Starmer hasn't got the backbone to tackle it, is the explanation of what that means for people. What that means for people, because it's not just queues in everywhere, every street. It's not just no places in the NHS. It's not just no school places. It's what it means for people in terms of national identity.
Can I give you one stat on that?
Yeah, please do.
Today, Keir Starmer's going to say they're going to commit to 1.5 million new homes. According to analysis last week, we need to build 800,000 homes just to keep up with migration. Absolutely bonkers.
Yeah. Well, Olivia Otley joins us now. Olivia, do you have any explanation as to why migration is not on this list of aims?
Well, I think probably because it's quite a difficult one to achieve. And what Keir Starmer is trying to do today is he's actually calling them 6 missions, and they are, he says, tangible targets based off those 5 pledges that you read out there, which were in the election manifesto. What he's trying to do is sort of drill down on what he promised and make deliverable goals, and he wants to be judged off those goals by 2029. I think he may have learned from Rishi Sunak, who did something very similar back at the beginning of 2023. He stood up and said, these are the 5 things I want to achieve. You can judge me on whether or not I've achieved them. At the time, journalists like me, I was there at the press conference, we all said, well, they all sound quite easy, I think. He's shooting a little bit low. And when it came to it, he actually failed in all but one of them. He did manage to reduce inflation and get interest rates down. Keir Starmer, it seems, is doing something similar. I think he wants to avoid the issue of migration because it is so incredibly difficult. The other glaring omission from these 6 missions is anything really about defence. Now, we are living in an increasingly dangerous global world, as we see again and again. During the election campaign, Rishi Sunak said that he would pledge to increase defence spending to 2.5% of GDP. Now, most senior Army and Navy officials say that actually it should be more like 3%. Keir Starmer said during the election campaign he had a goal to raise it to 2.5%, but didn't put any sort of date or timeline on when he wanted to achieve that by. Again, he's had this chance to clarify, and he hasn't clarified. So migration or defence not mentioned in these 6 pledges. As for what he does talk about, we've got raising real household disposable income. Again, that seems like a little bit of a, dare I say, a bit of a cop-out. During the election campaign, Keir Starmer, his mission for the economy was to get Britain the fastest growing country in the G7. That seems to have gone a little bit by the wayside. He doesn't talk about that anymore. He talks about raising real household income, which perhaps he thinks is a more achievable target. It'll be fascinating to see. I'm sure one of the journalists in that presser later this morning is going to ask him about that. I'll be really interested to see whether he sticks by that G7 target or not.
It's kind of unprecedented, isn't it? I think, Matt, to somebody to have been in office for this short amount of time and feel the need to do this kind of reset at this time.
Yeah, I mean, I think Labour advisors would tell you this has been this has been coming for a while. But I mean, Starmer's ratings this morning are -32. Now that's what I would call, Meghan Markle territory. I mean, this is really bad stuff. But the other thing that strikes me is the numbers here. We've just smashed pensioners to save 1.5 billion. We've smashed family farms to raise 500 million. We've taken 500 million off the Ministry of Defence, but they won't talk about fixing the asylum system, which is costing £5.5 billion a year. I mean, can we just get real about the numbers? What do Labour people say when you say, well, why aren't you talking about immigration?
Well, they say that they are talking about immigration. We hear from Keir Starmer that his plan is to smash the gangs, to tackle the problem upstream on illegal immigration specifically. Obviously, that's easier said than done. The previous government, too, clearly wanted to tackle the problem upstream, etc. Keir Starmer is hopeful that just to put forward the government's side, he is hoping that he can develop a better relationship with the EU, and with that better relationship will become better communication about the border. Perhaps a better relationship with France could help with sending illegal migrants back to France. France is obviously in its own political turmoil.
Remember when they told us staying in the EU would be more stable? Now look at France, the government's collapsing and actually nobody can agree on border security.
I think the issue is that Keir Starmer would rather not talk about migration, partly because it is so difficult. You know, you could argue that Rishi Sunak worked very hard to try and tackle migration. Some of those deals that those bilateral deals that he did before the election, the deal with Albania, actually did bring down the number of Albanian migrants by 70%. But obviously you've got many more who want to come in their place. It's a really difficult issue to tackle. And not only that, but the Labour Party is very split on it. There are plenty of uber-progressive Labour MPs who actually think that controlling the borders isn't a goal that a Labour Party should be going for. They think that more immigration is always a good thing. So that's an issue which really splits the party, and I think shows just the dangers of having a coalition as broad as the one that Labour won in the July election. You've got some people who are with the most progressives in the Labour Party, like massive immigration, and some people who are basically disillusioned Conservative voters.
But I mean, the less they talk about immigration, to be frank, the bigger the open goal for reform. And I know later we're speaking to Emily Carver, who's in Grimsby. There's a really interesting seat where you've got Labour number 1, you've got Reform number 2, you've got Nigel Farage saying basically they're going to go for those Labour heartlands on these issues around migration and security. I mean, this stuff's not going away.
Yeah, and you've got the Reform Party with 100,000 members now, which is pretty astonishing given where they were sort of a year ago. It'd be really interesting to see how that Reform vote sort of settles. Will it be taking Conservative votes or will it actually be taking Labour votes?
OK, thank you, Olivia. Are you with us later this morning?
Don't know.
If not, can I just say good luck, because this is your last day at work before you go off and have your little Christmas baby,
It is.
which is wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank
Our first
you.
baby news baby, I think that will be. Won't be smart on screen. So, listen, we're going to be going to Emily Carver in a minute. She's going to tell us what is going on. Oh, we're going to go to her right now, actually. Emily is in Grimsby. Lovely Grimsby up north, but they've got some problems they're dealing with, haven't they, Emily? What's coming up?
Yes, believe it or not, this used to be one of the richest areas in the country, an absolute hub for economic activity, including fishing. Of course, sadly, in the past few decades, it's become more and more deprived, and it's been in the news this week because of that very high level of unemployment. We're on Freeman Street, the main high street here. As you can see, there are quite a lot of shops, but sadly, there are quite a few shops that are boarded up as well. But we're going to go into Freeman Street Market today, which is full of local businesses here. We've got flowers, we've got lots of fruit and veg and things, but also we've got Gary's Meat over here, and we're going to speak to Gary, who owns this butcher's here that's been at this market for many years, and we're going to speak to Gary, have a look at this lovely meat we've got on offer here. Oh, Gary, thank you very much, Dee, for agreeing to speak to us. I just wanted to get your really of the local area, how things are going.
To be fair, it's quite good. You know, and a lot of people paint Grimsby to be a bad place. There was a thing on the other night on telly about it, but it's not that bad at all. It's pretty good. You know, I've lived here all my life and I won't move away.